Hey guys, welcome back or welcome for the first time to the I Am Salt Lake podcast. Today on episode 461, we got to talk to Julian Carr. Julian Carr is a professional skier, which is cool in and of itself, but he is a professional skier in cliff height jumping, dropping?
Sounds good.
What's the word?
Close
okay,
enough.
Cool. Falling and not dying in big powder. Julian, this was so much fun. He is so cool to talk to. And I loved listening to him talk about how he thinks and how his brain integrates different things. It's actually a brilliant conversation.
Hey, before we get into that conversation, let's introduce ourselves.
Let's do it.
My name is Chris Hollifield.
And my name's Chrissy Hollifield.
Hey, if this is your first time joining us for the podcast, like Chrissy said, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. You might be asking, though, what is this podcast all about? What am I about to listen to? Well, this podcast is all about showcasing awesome people right here in Salt Lake City. We're talking to business owners, authors, tattoo artists, restaurant owners, breweries, professional skiers, really anyone that might have a cool story to share.
And I have a cool story to share.
What's that?
It's your birthday. Literally, today is your birthday.
And I told you not to say anything.
Yeah, but I'm really bad at that. We went out for steaks last night, and I forgot that you don't like to be the center of attention. And I was like, "Hey, everybody, it's his birthday!" And then the server was so nice.
They almost sang to me.
She came over and she said, "Do you want free cake?" And you're like, "No, I'm good." And then she's like, "Do you want us to sing to you?" And you're like, "No, I'm good."
So there's a tip for people listening. Always ask if you can sing happy birthday to somebody.
Not everyone's insane like Chrissy.
Yeah.
But happy birthday. I just want to tell you that I love you.
Oh, well, thank you.
And
it's been an awesome 43 years.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been around for the last 5, but I'm game. I like it. Hey, can we talk about my favorite coffee, though?
Of course.
Oh, good, because I love Hugo Coffee. Hugo Coffee are sponsors of our podcast, and they're literally our personal friends, and I can't get enough of them. Hugo Coffee Roasters is all about saving dogs one bag of coffee at a time. 10% of their net profits go to dog rescue organizations to provide shelter, beds, veterinary care, and toys. Also, they can be happy and healthy until they get adopted.
Hugo Coffee is a craft coffee roastery based right out of Park City, Utah. And what's really cool is that their head roaster, John, selects the highest quality beans with a rich flavor profile for a wide range of roasts from light to dark and even an espresso roast. Their website, this one's really easy to remember. It's just hugo.coffee. Go check it out. Go check out all the different coffee that they have available. I Am Salt Lake podcast listeners, we created a special promo code just for you. Enter the promo code podcast. That's PODCAST when you're at checkout. And what happens is you get buy one bag, get the second bag 50% off with free shipping. This is a great Christmas gift. I mean, just send it right to their house. 2 bags of coffee to someone's house. Boom.
Do it. Just do it. Save puppies, get great coffee, and share great coffee with the friends that you love. Again, their website is hugo.coffee. Go check out the Black Paw French Roast, Bonafido Dark Roast, Rollover Breakfast Blend, Dog Days Cold Brew, or maybe even the Howler Espresso. Aren't those names so cute?
I love them.
I can't even get through listing those names without smiling like crazy. Remember to use the promo code podcast and you get yourself the exclusive buy one get the second bag 50% off with free shipping, just for I Am Salt Lake podcast listeners and your friends.
All right, here's that conversation that we had with Julian Carr. This guy's awesome. You're going to love listening to this one. Thank you so much and enjoy the conversation.
Cool. I got a beer and a water right here and a cheese board. I'm ready to roll.
Nice. Double
Dude,
fist.
he's got a cheese board, man. And Chrissy, Chrissy has this cheese platter that she pulls out every night and just grazes on it.
Delicious.
My people.
See, I was like, man, that sounds better than what I have. Water and Junior Mints. I need to step my podcast food game up.
Dude, you guys need to put just a big old charcuterie board right between, the mics, and I think you guys will I don't
Just
know.
go to town.
Questions could just get way better. Who knows?
So let's go back, man. I want to start right into like what or who got you interested in skiing. And that's probably like a really big question or a loaded question. There might not be one answer for that.
Sure.
Or maybe there is. I don't know. You tell me.
So I'm born and raised in Salt Lake, and I grew up in the Avenues. And obviously, I was aware of the mountains. I went camping in the Uintas. I went to southern Utah a lot, but I did not ski or snowboard. I grew up skateboarding, gymnastics, and lots of team sports. And I had the trampoline in my backyard, and I was just like kind of all over the place. But I loved the foam pit in gymnastics. Like I would always like climb into the rafters, jump from the trampoline into it. I was just all day in the foam pit. I can't even imagine how many hours on my trampoline in my backyard. And so in 5th grade, I tried snowboarding and crashed super hard my very first run, twisted up my knee, and didn't touch snow again until 8th grade. My mom skied, and she kept telling me I needed to come ski with her because she went on the weekends with her girlfriends. And I finally went kind of just to like, make my mom stoked, just to go do something with her. And immediately just fell in love with skiing, kind of clicked for me. And I just fell in love with it day one, and very quickly experienced, the magic of Utah powder, and it instantly easily associated that powder with foam pits. And that's kind of been my perspective ever since that first year when I first started learning. And I just tried to find jumps into powder. And I looked at, the mountains as just a bigger version of a foam pit. And that kind of perspective has just never changed. And living in Utah, I've had the, opportunity, and I'm grateful that I've been able to travel the world the last, 10, 15 years of my ski career. And it's the truth. Like our snow, our mountains, the Wasatch, the dry desert POW, and how it comes down, 500 inches annually. It is the world's best snow. So falling into that in 8th grade and in high school, and having a ton of big winters, those first formative years of my skiing, really let me take that kind of foam pit approach easily because there's so much snow. So I thank my mom for taking me, and I obviously am stoked that I had a lot of fun with lots of skateboarding to appreciate, how skaters put lines together. And that's how I looked at the mountains. I'm like, I'm going to put lines together. I'm going to find jump to jump to jump to cliff to jump, and just try to put lines together through POW on foam pits in the mountains on skis.
Okay, I'm loving this. Can I ask a question?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this is the best how you have actually like incorporated different parts of things that you've loved in your life into skiing that I never would have put together. I don't know. Is that something that anyone else has ever said? Like, or is that I don't ski. I don't really talk to skiers much, but I think it's really cool that you've kind of connected all of those things.
Well, thanks. I think, the ski scene has definitely matured and gotten a lot of, I guess you could say, personality over the last 10, 15 years. But 15 years ago, it was kind of stale. There was a lot of racing and corporations that kind of led the charge, I guess you could say. Whereas you look at snowboard and skateboarding, those industries are very, led by individuals, and a lot of individuals are showcased, and it's kind of like a self-policed industry to a point. And a lot of that exists now in skiing, but back then it really didn't. I was definitely an outlier of, basically teaching myself how to ski, just trying to keep up with the friends that I'd made that were great skiers. I've been skiing their whole life. And obviously, like I said, taking a different kind of inspiration route. I wasn't a racer. I wasn't, a mogul skier. I wasn't formed by all these traditional routes that most skiers had kind of pursued, that fell in love with it as much as I did. But I grew up, like I said, watching skate videos and just try to put lines together. And I think it is unique, and I'm definitely stoked on that background, and just followed my own little weird vision I had right out of the gate with what I saw skiing as and how I identified with it, because I certainly didn't realize that not that many people had that perspective. I assumed everybody was looking for jumps and big cliffs and putting lines together like that. And I quickly realized that it was a pretty small group of people, and it's been fun to make lots of friends and have amazing peers that we've gravitated towards each other. And now that scene is definitely, like I said, matured and flourished, and there's a lot of cool things happening. But I look back and I was definitely must have been one of the only kids in 8th and ninth grade doing what we were doing. There definitely wasn't many.
So have you gotten back out and tried snowboarding again? You mentioned how you tried it and twisted your ankles up or something like that. I'm wondering if you got back out after a few years.
Definitely. I try to go a few times a winter. I still skate a lot in Salt Lake. I love bombing from up by Red Butte to downtown, just through the University of Utah campus, down First South or South Temple, and end up down at Crown Burger. And we just do laps. And then on a snowboard, man, like sunny spring laps at Brighton or Snowbird is so fun, because I just feels like I'm, cruising through town like I do usually through campus at the U.
What do you like better? I mean, I guess it's kind of a tough question because, of course, I guess you like skiing better because that's your profession.
You ever want to just
do you ever just want to just snowboard or something? Or do you ever just want to ditch the skis or something?
Well, take a break.
I've completely fell in love with skateboarding ever since I was in second grade or 2 years old, really. I was butt boarding and, trying to navigate all those crazy avenue hills and got the hang of it. And that's all I did.
That would make you get the hang of it. Holy cow.
7th grade. Yeah. And from falling in love so much with skating, that first day I tried snowboarding, I know if I wouldn't have gotten hurt that day, I twisted my knee and got crutches in 5th grade. I had the elevator or a key to the elevator at Wasatch Elementary. So I thought it was pretty cool for a few months. But it's interesting because looking back, I know if I wouldn't have gotten hurt that first day snowboarding, I know for a fact I would have never skied, for sure. But it's cool because I love skiing. I feel so at home on skis. And it's such a, thing I'm grateful for that I did get hurt snowboarding that day, because skiing gave me such an opportunity to travel and make so many amazing friends all over the world. And I truly love it. And I think, I obviously will always love skateboarding. And for whatever reason, I found a nice little niche and a good little talent that I've been able to nurture in skiing. And, skateboarding is hard. I think I could choose anything I could be professional at. And I definitely think skateboarders are the best athletes in the world. And what the top level professional skateboarders are doing, they're Yoda, And so I think that if I could choose anything, obviously I'd be a professional skateboarder, but I'm super happy everything's worked out being a professional skier.
You mentioned how if you would have continued snowboarding, you probably would have never picked up skiing, so on and so forth there. I'm curious, do you have any thoughts on what you would be doing today if you wouldn't be skiing? Do you have any thoughts of what direction you could have gone with your life?
I love business, and I've started a couple of businesses, but I guess we can get into that. But I think I just love being creative, and I love being outside. So I think, I would have meshed some kind of, interesting path, because I always get curious in things, and typically when I get really curious about stuff, somehow I end up finding a way to get others involved, monetize it, and kind of share and build a community around it. And I think that's what's so cool about, tying it back into Utah here, is that there's so much to do in Salt Lake, all 4 seasons, that it really is an interesting mountain community that lives in the Salt Lake Valley for kind of all the stereotypes we have from all over the nation. When you tell people you live here, it's so funny, obviously, the things you encounter, which I'm grateful for, because if people knew how good it was here, we'd be another Denver. So I'm super happy that we have weird alcohol laws. I'm super happy that obviously there's a lot of the LDS, religion is around, which of course I'm friends with a lot of those people. I think they're great. But obviously so many people think it's just a strange town. But with this kind of undercurrent of amazing mountain people, there's such a community here, and it's really fun to obviously have fun activities that I've been able to, build these communities all 4 seasons really, and just get to know so many unique people that live here that are world-class mountain people, and just all the enthusiasts and people that are just stoked to be weekend warriors and everything in between. I just love the inclusivity of the Wasatch and the Valley and how diverse it is really, and having a world-class city right next to truly world-class mountains.
All right, we're going to take just a moment and tell you about one of our awesome sponsors, Arc Insurance. Health insurance open enrollment is going on right now, and it ends December 15th. That means that you literally have just days to make any changes to your health insurance coverage for next year. Or you can get enrolled in health insurance if you don't currently have any coverage. Did you know that you can get the help of a health insurance broker at no cost to you?
Arc Insurance is based right here in Utah, and they can help. They are experienced agents who will help you compare health insurance plans and get you enrolled in one that best fits your needs and budget. There's not much time, so it's important to get on an Arc agent's calendar right away. To make an appointment today, visit arcutah.com. That's ARKutah.com, or call 801-901-7800.
I picked up on when you were talking about how you want to, keep our little weird liquor laws, and you don't want to turn us into Denver and all this and that. And it's tough because I think we slowly are. Well, pretty quickly are. And I'm wondering what it's been like for you to see the ski resorts I don't know. Did you mention how early you started skiing? You mentioned about how old you were.
8th grade?
8th grade or something like that to now. I'm sure the ski resorts are just insanely packed now. Is it even as nice and as fun to go out skiing as it was when you were in the 8th grade? Because the mountains just must be packed now.
Well, that's another thing that I'm grateful for, having the the mileage and the, I guess, insight and the knowledge of how to basically navigate those busy days so that I don't encounter any of that riffraff. So I just know which road to drive on, when to wake up, where to hike to, so that I'm kind of 2 steps ahead of everyone the entire day.
No, I dig it. Yeah. I dig it.
Makes sense. You'd get to know the routines if you go often enough.
But to your point, 10 years ago, you could get up casually on a powder day at 8 a.m., drink your coffee, and head up any of the Cottonwood Canyons, find a parking spot, and have a great pow day and drive down the canyon and not really have any issues. These days, if you aren't, basically heading up to the canyon by 7 a.m., you will wait in a huge line. And if you get up there and you're lucky enough to get a parking spot, and you're going to, be in some serious lines a little bit. And even if you know which chairlifts maybe you should be getting on that aren't as bad, you can still have a great day, but you're not going to have nearly what you had 10 years ago. And you're going to have to deal with some insane traffic on the way down. And I've heard of, and, I've had to sit in a couple times, but it's, a few hours just to get down Little or Big Cottonwood Canyon. So I know that Save Our Canyons and Wasatch Backcountry Alliance are definitely, paying attention and auditing all these options at the Forest Service and, kind of all the major players involved, that those canyons are going to obviously see some major, efficiencies implemented over the next few years. And I'm glad that those watchdogs are certainly being a part of that conversation, because it's such a beautiful canyon that we need to leave untouched, because that's one of the reasons why people move to Utah, is because we have beautiful, beautiful public lands. So I feel like it's very important to keep a lot of them public, and at the same time try to understand how we can solve these major congestion issues.
You probably get to travel though quite a bit. Like you were mentioning that in the beginning. So like during the ski season, you're probably not even skiing very often here in Utah, are you?
So yeah, the last few years I've definitely spent more time away from Utah than in it. 2 winters ago, I was on the road 4 months straight. I didn't even come home like in between trips.
Wow.
But when I'm out, like last year, I purposely made sure that I had, a week home in between trips, because I love it here and I miss it when I'm not here. So that winter 2 years ago when I was gone for 4 months straight, man, I just, it hit me hard that I missed Utah a lot, because I realized all the last 10 years of traveling, I always, came home in between trips and was able to get my fill. So when I didn't, man, it was a huge, huge void that I was like, man, I love Utah skiing. It's the best.
Do you still get out to ski with your mom at all, or does she ski at all?
She lives in Portland, Oregon. She had a knee replacement, so I haven't skied with her in probably 10, 15 years. I wish that I could ski with her more, but I get out to Portland a lot, and my sister lives out there, has a couple kids, so I got to go hang with the crew out there in Portland.
What do they think of like you being a professional skier and some of the crazy stuff that you do while you ski, especially your mom, is that she showed you how
does she like take you around town? This is my son.
No, she's probably like, gosh, why did I show it to him? Why did I show him how to ski?
No, she struggled with all of it kind of when it was all getting going. And I started falling in love with the cliff stuff. And then after a couple of years, she really sat me down and was like, hey, do you love what you do? And I was like, I do, Mom. I love it. And she's like, okay. She's like, I can make peace with that.
That's cool.
Well, that's good. That's good. That is hard. I can imagine as a mom, it would be really difficult to see your son go into something that could potentially be very dangerous.
Do you have any siblings? Yeah,
I have a sister, and she...
Oh, yeah, so you mentioned sister.
Yeah, she's amazing. She doesn't ski, but she's kind of, through our whole childhood, for whatever reason, which I respect her for, but she was kind of always the type that would dip her toe before she would, engage in whatever. And I was kind of always more like, I'm going to have a look and then I'm going to jump right in. And so we definitely are different in a lot of ways, but she went skydiving a few years ago, which I've never done. And so she holds that over my head. So I was actually shocked that she went skydiving because, like I said, that was way out of her kind of personality history.
Good for her.
Now, how does one become a professional skier, right? Like, how did that happen for you? I mean, did you have jobs prior to this?
I do have to say that I like that skiing seems like your plan B. Like skateboarding's number one, but it's okay. You're a professional skier.
Well, like I said, I admire the immense talent and creativity that goes into skateboarding. And I think the individuals that are at the top of that sport, like I said, are just unbelievable athletes. I think it's the hardest sport in the world, hands down. But yeah, I think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful sport. You're just like full on samurai with your feet. It's crazy how much technical precision, balls, creativity, like it's so cool. It's a cool sport. But with skiing, I think it's been a interesting path. When I got into it in high school, I was going like 30, 40 times a year and definitely was loving it. And then senior in high school, freshman in college, I, was buying up all the magazines, watching all the movies that were coming out. And all I could think of, obviously, besides thinking it was rad, but I was like, I can definitely do all that. That's all I kept thinking. It was like, I can do all this. And so I started to kind of just look at it from how do you get into that? How do you do that? Because I can obviously do those things, I think. Now, how did these guys get that opportunity? And I need to create that for myself. And I think that right away, I started to understand the business side of it and really was able to optimize it and understand that platform right out of the gate. And I think that in any professional athletic pursuit, I think there's a lot of really talented athletes in a lot of sports that come along that are just so noteworthy that they obviously make a big imprint on that sport that maybe is short-lived because they don't care or, don't have the skills or know-how to be, professionally dialed. Because to have longevity as a professional athlete in these action sports, if you're not really a contest skier, you need to, and even if you are, you need to understand that you're a storyteller for these brands, and you need to be able to exist in like all the traditional marketing platforms and create your own, obviously these days, with all the stuff going on with the internet and social media. So I just understood what the traditional platforms were, which are movies and magazines and contests, and was able to, obviously make friends with lots of amazing, very established photographers, because obviously it's an epicenter here in Salt Lake. Some of like the Walmarts of ski photographers and film companies are based out of here. And right away, I looked at it as like distribution. Those are like major distributors. And obviously they're guys that spend their time in the mountains too. And the more I got to know them, they've just became good friends. But I think that's what has given me a lot of shelf life as an athlete, is that I've enjoyed the professional side of it. And so that's why I think I've stuck around for so long, instead of making just an imprint for a few years like a lot of people do and then kind of fade away, because I really took ownership on understanding that professional side of it to make sure that I was doing a great job for all the brands that I've represented and continue to do that.
That's a really powerful thing that I think not a lot of people consider when they want to go into something, that it can really benefit you to try to fall in love with every aspect of the industry, including the whole business side, because that's where you make money.
Yeah.
And it's highly unusual. So it's a really neat perspective to hear.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of people ask me. They're like, "So how does it work? How are you a professional skier?" And basically, I just look at it as it's my job to overuse the word storytell, but I need to obviously ski well and get integrated with movies, magazines, TV shows, podcasts, webcasts, social media, all those things, and produce, get plugged in, everything. You just have to learn how to basically be very good with logistics and how to schedule and how to, obviously, once you do get plugged in, deliver. And, at the end of the day, you're traveling around all over the world with small groups of people. So you need to, not suck to travel with. Because I've heard obviously other guys too that maybe understood the business side and they're a talented athlete. And then you hear nightmares about how they suck to travel with, and they'll never get called again, because it's such a small amount of people that get to be at that kind of small table, that there's constantly shuffling, people not in it anymore and people being let in. And a lot of that is, like I said, your professionalism, but also when you're traveling around the world, small groups of people, you need to be able to hang with the crew,
Yeah, it's like soft skills. You have to be worth being around or fun to be around. Not fun. We can't always be fun. But if you're not pleasant, then someone who's talented talented and pleasant will just step up.
Well, exactly. Because if those guys that do produce and they have the budget and they have the relationships with the ski companies, when it's time for them to call the athletes to go get on these productions, they're going to be like, "Oh, we're definitely calling whoever back. He was a blast to travel with, and he killed it whenever we needed him. And he was professional during, and after, with all the follow-up and all the asset management and all the interviews and all that kind of stuff you have to conduct after the fact. There's just so much that goes into it. So yeah, you get called back. And if you suck to travel with, or you're not professional, you don't get called back."
Makes sense to me.
So where does Discrete Clothing come into all this?
You just wanted more business stuff to worry about?
I didn't know if you started that to kind of help fund your ski hobby, but it sounded like maybe you became a professional skier before Discrete happened, right?
Yeah, I got my ski career going, and right out of the gate, I saw kind of some of my heroes in the industry were getting older, I guess you could say, and kind of stumbling over their next play in life. So I saw, some guys going back to school, or, starting a landscape company, or window cleaning, or being bitter at the bar, and just being like, wow, these are some of the biggest names in this sport, and they're really struggling with their next, move in life, because I think it came onto them quicker than they probably anticipated. And next thing you know, they don't have enough income to live as they had from skiing for so many years. But I was just shocked because they're some of the biggest names that were really like having a hard time figuring out what to do next. And so right out of the gate, I was like, I should create a company that, I can have some awesome income by the time my shelf life is up as a professional athlete. So that was the inspiration for Discrete, was just to create something that I could give life to simultaneously during my ski career, so that I could, like I said, have something going on that when the skiing shelf life obviously comes to an expiration, there's, some kind of symmetry going on, that I have a nice other path that I'm trying to develop as well.
Now, I love your clothes. I mean, I've bought a handful of them here and there. You've been set up at like the downtown farmers markets and stuff, and I think even Park Silly through the years. When did Discrete start? What year was that approximately?
The very first year we made beanies was 2005. So that's like when I first came up with all the idea for it, and started making as much beanies as I could with the little bit of money that I had. Because at the time I was just finishing college, so I was in school full time. I was working full time at a sports bar in downtown Salt Lake at Gateway, the Skybox. And I was starting to, create Discrete while chasing the ski career. So I kind of had 4 busy little scenes going on all at once. But in 2008 was the first year we went to a trade show. So 2008 is kind of the first year I say that we started.
And you must hire people to take care of most of Discrete stuff, right? You're not trying to handle all that on your own, are you?
I did for 4 or 5 years. I've always had help, but I was definitely running the show for quite a while. And it was great. I learned so much about business and how to multitask, and found a nice rhythm as far as traveling and maintaining, a completely separate professional life that just gave me more acumen to obviously implement in my ski career. So I learned so much tools, you could say, from the business side of things from Discrete, that was they complemented each other. And I made a lot of great decisions with Discrete, and I made a lot of bad decisions, but I also just never stopped learning. And I always said that creating your own business is just a never ending equal of challenging and being rewarding. And it's been cool because 5 years ago, I started Cirque Series mountain races, and everything that I've learned from a skier, from marketing and production, and then everything I've learned from Discrete, from logistics and just purely business side of things, I was able to funnel all of it into Cirque Series. And just out of the gate, I was like, I know exactly what I'm doing. I know what my vision is, and I know all the mechanics that go into this business. And it's been fun to create that business now 5 years later, and we're selling out all our races. And again, amazing community, and able to put that race on in Alaska and Wyoming and Colorado and Utah. And it's been fun to see that one take off without, like I said, not being just a source of education. I call Discrete. And obviously Discrete is this cool little clothing company in the outdoor world, and I'm proud of it. And I have an amazing crew that runs that with me, and I can kind of steer ships with that program. And I'm really hands-on with Cirque Series and my ski career now. So it's, just a fun layer to it all. But like I said, it was such an education, and skiing was too, that I've been able to just funnel all of everything I've learned into doing Cirque Series right out of the gate.
We're going to take just a moment now and tell you about one of our awesome sponsors, UtahMarijuana.org. I love these guys. UtahMarijuana.org is your number one spot for all things medical marijuana, medical cannabis, CBD, and THC. You guys remember Tim Pickett from episode 420 when he came on and talked to us about all the cool things he's doing with UtahMarijuana.org. Now is your opportunity to get your medical cannabis card. UtahMarijuana.org's team of medical cannabis experts makes getting your medical card easy from your first office visit to navigating the state card application and beyond.
With over 20 compassionate and highly skilled qualified medical providers ready to help you find relief, you won't have to search for a doctor willing to recommend cannabis treatment. The patient experience team at utahmarijuana.org is dedicated to helping you get all the way through the process so you can get your medicine legally.
Hey, and if you're in the West Valley City area, they are located now at 3615 West, 1987 South, Building 8. So depending on where you live in the valley, they have an office near you. Isn't it time that you took control of your own health? UtahMarijuana.org, and many thanks to UtahMarijuana.org for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Tell us, so Cirque Series, what is this, like a marathon or something that people can enter, or like a race or something?
Yeah, it's a foot race in the summers, and I do them, basically up like to an iconic peak and back down. So we have races in Alyeska, Alaska, where we race up 3,900 vertical feet in under 6 miles. And it's, exposed, it's technical, and it's a mountain adventure. And we do them at Brighton, Snowbird, Alta, Grand Targhee, Arapahoe Basin in Colorado up at 13,000 feet. And all of them are accessible. That's kind of like I was talking about earlier, the inclusivity. All the races go up into the high alpine where I'm used to boot packing and spending a lot of my winters way up there. So in the summers, I started hiking Mount Olympus a lot here in Salt Lake. And, that's a major ass kicker for the people that have hiked it, that. And if you haven't, it's only a 5-mile hike and it has 4,000 vert. And obviously the views are incredible. You get the most insane workout you've ever had. And on the way down, it's like crazy agility to, I wouldn't call it running. I don't call any of it running, but that's what Cirque Series is. It's a trail running race series, but all of the races are up to an iconic peak like Mount Olympus as fast as you can and back down. And they're all under 10 miles. They're all around 3,000 vert. And we get all walks of life. We've had ages 8 through 82, plus Olympians and professional runners. So we have kind of everyone there, and everyone feels comfortable, and it's equally challenging for everyone. And for me, it's like, let's bring a cool scene to it, just like skiing. Like, let's have brands there. Let's have food. Let's have music. Let's have an announcer. Let's make it, a party. So that's kind of how I've created those races, so that we go up into the high alpine, just like you do skiing, have a really challenging, fun time that doesn't destroy you like a ultra running does or a marathon. It's not super easy like a 5K or a 10K. And it's not, dorky, like I'm going running, putting on my short shorts and running down the road and back. Like, it's a mountain, it's like experience. It's a rich mountain experience, just like I say skiing and snowboarding is. And so I've been able to capture that and share it again, like how I said earlier, community. So it's been fun to provide that to beginners and to the elites all in one kind of umbrella.
That must keep you pretty busy in the off season from skiing. So you got the skiing in the winter and then that in the summer. So keeps you
active.
Yeah, well, it keeps me hiking in the mountains. And like I said, I just love being in the mountains. So it's very, again, I'm grateful that I've been able to monetize and share that love I have for being in the mountains year round. So that's what's super fun, is that Discrete is business, it's creative. You're part of that industry, you're part of the culture. And then skiing, obviously, you're in the mountains, you're being athletic. But it's kind of more my career. But then Cirque Series, I feel like it's fun because I'm giving back and I'm able to share that love for the high alpine that I get to experience as a skier every year. And, we go up into the high alpine some people wouldn't even know where to start, how to access that kind of terrain.
Right.
And then obviously to have our safety crews that we have at each race and our aid support, and just the, all the protocols that we have in place to help people feel comfortable. It's really rewarding as a race director to see so many people go up into the high alpine for their first time, really, and come down and they're just beaming with happiness. And to me, that just feels so fun for me to be able to share why I love being in the high alpine mountains year round. And so to see people get to experience that for their first time is just like, unbelievable feeling to me as a race director and just someone that loves being in the mountains, just to be able to share that.
Yeah, well, and it's like you get to see them have this huge sense of accomplishment too, especially
Absolutely.
being able to experience that for the first time, and that's got to feel just incredible.
Oh, it's crazy. It's such a cool feeling. It's when you're down on the finish line, because I've ran every race so far, and obviously it's a working lap. I'm kind of auditing to make sure our volunteers are where they should be, our EMTs are where they should be, our course marking looks good, the weather's doing okay. Like, it's obviously a working lap, but
It's a user experience lap.
Yeah, when I get into the finish line, I'm happy. I can see and feel just genuine happiness, and it's a pretty magical feeling.
I know what I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you, can any of our listeners in the Salt Lake City area purchase any of the Discrete Clothing anywhere here locally, or is it all off online?
Yeah, just discreteclothing.com. And if you live in Salt Lake, just in the notes on your order, you can just say that you'd like to come in and get it. And you can just cruise into our showroom and our warehouse and pick up your order, or just go in and browse stuff. 4 years ago, we had a storefront, and we were in, REI, Zoomies, backcountry.com, and we had about 120 doors across the U.S. plus 15 international distributors. But there's so many moving parts to that aspect of the business, and it was all wholesale. And I was like, you know what? Let's bring it all just to discreteclothing.com, cut out all that absurd amount of moving parts of our entire wholesale business globally, and let's just focus on our own website and our own web store. So yeah, you can just go to discreteclothing.com, and if you want to come in and grab it just to save on the shipping and obviously the carbon imprint, that'd be awesome.
Very cool. Do you have like any long-term plans with Discrete or anything? Like, where do you see it in the next 5 to 10 years? Like, do you see it getting any bigger, or just kind of staying where it's at?
It's an awesome vessel. I think that, product and category expansion is ripe. Right now, my mind is super comfortable with, Discrete being a really relevant, fun, cool, for the most part, we're a known beanie brand in the snow industry. And I'm just trying to be really proud of that. I think 5 years ago, I had huge aspirations of what I wanted Discrete to be and the kind of products that I wanted Discrete to have. And we dabbled a little bit in a lot of that. And at the same time is when I started creating the Cirque Series races. And that's kind of where I'm seeing my focus on expanding the Cirque Series. And just letting Discrete be, and obviously still work hard at Discrete being a cool beanie brand in the snow industry, but I'm just starting to be really proud of that, because I was always just eye on the prize of bigger aspirations for Discrete. But when I've been able to kind of reel it all back a little bit, I'm like, you know what, man, this is cool. I can't even believe that I didn't take a freaking second to take a pause or to be content a little bit about what we've already created. We're a pretty cool beanie brand in the snow industry. That's pretty rad. Let's be that. We don't need to keep looking down this bigger horizon path that I think we all get caught up in, especially in business. And I'm like, let's just keep being that. This is pretty cool in itself. And in the meantime, like I said, I'm really fired up on growing and optimizing all things Cirque Series.
It's good to keep your eye on the prize, but also enjoy the ride while you go. Cause a lot of times, I know I can be one to, I can't be happy until I, get to where I think I'm going to be happy.
It is hard to set a goal and incrementally work towards it, because it can be grueling and exhausting and feel like a grind, and you can overlook these huge accomplishments along the way. So it is cool to hear that you actually could sit back and enjoy some of your accomplishments while you're working towards your goal.
Yeah, totally. And it's awesome. I love.
I'm pretty cool.
It all boils down. No, it just boils down to, like I said, I love being in the mountains, and I feel so fortunate that I've been able to have kind of 3 career paths that all 3 of those, are anchored in mountain culture.
Now, did I read somewhere that you hold 2 world records? Was that correct?
Yeah, I got a couple.
I've got a couple. You got to share with our listeners what these world records are. What are these all about?
So, just along my path of, like I said, looking at the mountains as an oversized gymnastics foam pit, I've been lucky enough to kind of cultivate this strange skill set I found that I had, obviously through a strange, I could go on and on about how I became the cliff guy, but in the ski scene, I'm really known for routinely kind of being the only guy really that hits 100-foot plus cliffs routinely. And it's weird. I feel like I've just found this cheat code, and I don't quite understand why other people haven't, because a few other skiers have came along and, hit a couple here and there, but, I probably have 30, 40, 100 plus foot cliffs under my belt. And the world records are the biggest cliff with an invert. So I did a front flip off a 210-foot cliff in Switzerland.
Holy cow.
I know it sounds absurd. It is absurd, but
It is. That's true.
But the kind of the path I've taken to be able to do that safely and confidently is sane. The path is sanity. It's not insanity, I promise. It's definitely not Mountain Dew culture that we're all used to seeing. It's, for me, very hyper awareness, very meditative, very sense of artistry to it, relationship to the mountains, and to be there to share in those kind of energies in the mountains, not dominate them. And it's a very magical transformation, basically, that I go through to achieve that sense of heightened awareness that I do know with my being 100% purely and wholly that I'm going to be okay when I do these things. And it's profound. It's wild when I read like interviews of monks and where they can take their consciousness. That's, I know it because I get to visit that. And obviously I access it through flirting with the edge of my mortality with cliffs that should be impossible, but it's all clear. And I find that I get into that headspace that I've only heard really monks talk about. And that's how calm I get and how in tune I get with my surrounding, who I am, the environment, the cosmos. It's a very shared sense of energy with my surroundings. And
you're at one with the universe, it sounds like.
What's that?
It sounds like you're at one with the universe when you're in that space.
100%. I definitely no longer have ownership on I'm a part of everything around me when I do those things.
Did it take a while for you to reach that feeling? I mean, I can imagine training in something like skiing, especially when you're doing the cliffs and everything. I mean, did you get hurt or ever hit a point where you were kind of nervous and you're like, I should probably quit? I mean, what keeps motivating you and pushing you besides the feeling of oneness that you can achieve, right?
Yeah.
And, world records and being awesome and all that stuff. Like, what's the why behind it?
Well, it's a great question. And actually a really serious injury led me to kind of the mental acuity to make better decisions that ultimately led me to making decisions to hit cliffs. So early on in my ski career, kind of the first year I had sponsors, I was just really sure of my abilities, and I'd, get into whatever I was trying to do, and 99%, that was kind of like I can do this 99%, I'm pretty sure. And those 1% would happen every once in a while, but I'd usually miraculously real time make some kind of crazy recovery, or I'd have a fantastic crash and just brush myself off and keep going at a 99%. And then this was, when I was hitting at the biggest, maybe 30, 40 foot cliffs and just skiing highly technical lines routinely, big lines, fast, and, a lot of close calls. And I was okay with it. And then one day, the first year I had a bunch of sponsors, took my preseason training super seriously. I was skiing so well day one of this particular year. I'd never felt better on my skis. And I was at Snowbird, and I lined up kind of this really technical kind of double stager cliffy line thing. It wasn't just a cliff. It was like really technical area that I had to get through. And I lined it up and I nailed it. And to me, I was like, wow, for me to ski something like this and have the comfort and the strength, usually this is like a mid-season kind of line I pull off. But there I was, day one of the year. I felt so good skiing all day long. I came back to that line later on in the day, didn't focus on exactly what I needed to do. I just took, everything for granted. I'm skiing awesome. I got this. And I rolled into it, didn't have it all figured out. And I screwed up and I got sent over my handlebars. So I was falling chest forward and I could see all these rocks passing underneath me because I kind of fell off this second part of the cliff through this highly rocky, crazy area. And I like outstretched my body and clipped my hip on the rocks and crashed face down. And right away, I just grabbed my hip and I was like, oh my God, like that hurt so bad. Ouch, and I rolled over onto my back and my leg was draped across my body and my boot was up by my head. So so I had this wet noodle of my entire leg draped across my chest and my boot was up by my head. And I grabbed my whole leg and, took the wet noodle and put it, I aligned it the way it should be and like packed snow all around it. And, in those 5 seconds, all I could think of was like, okay, you need to get your leg aligned and then you need to take a deep breath and move your toes. Because I was like, you might be paralyzed right now. You need to move. Can you move your toes? And I could move my toes. And so I was like, okay, sweet. That's great. I'm like, if I start losing consciousness right now, that means I have an internal, sever of my femoral artery or whatever. Because my leg is so broke and it's way up by my hip socket. So I'm like,
and you were thinking all of this at that time while you were going through it?
Oh yeah, I was just so alert because I knew I needed to be alert to see my way through that major of an injury.
You're like the doctor that was in Antarctica and performed his own appendicitis surgery or something.
I heard about that.
That's insane that you could be that clear in that moment.
Well, I just knew I had to be. I knew every second was precious, and
he had to.
And I was like, okay, if you start losing consciousness, that's it. You have an internal whatever, and this is going to be it. And so, a couple minutes went by, and by then my friends started showing up because they found their way to where I had crashed and started calling for help. And I was still very alert. And I'm like, okay, sweet. It looks like I didn't sever an artery. It looks like I can move my toes. I'm like, I definitely have broke my hip, my femur, my everything, who knows, down there. I'm like, but at least I can move my toes and it doesn't appear as though I'm going to die right now. And so they got me down to the clinic, took an x-ray, and I shattered my femur in 11 pieces. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, even the MRI showed that quite a few of those bone fragments came within millimeters of nicking my femoral artery. So that was pretty surreal to sit down with a doctor and have him clearly show me just how many of those, 4 or 5 of the pieces were within millimeters of nicking my femoral artery. So
how close you came to possible death.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
And so,
yeah,
that happened in late November, and they did a very successful titanium rod down my femur surgery. And, I'd never taken anything more serious in my life than the physical therapy to obviously get back to just first things first, walking and get full range of motion, and, we'll worry about the rest later. But I was so dedicated. I was in the physical therapy place 5 days a week, plus doing my own stationary biking. I was eating super well. I was going to a chiropractor or massage therapist. I was doing Reiki and Rolfing and eating well. I wasn't drinking. I was just so focused on visualizing blood flowing to the bones and just everything I could think of to holistically heal that whole process. So anyway, they were like, you probably won't ski for at least a couple of
A
years,
while.
and well, who knows if you get back to where you were. So I can go on, but I ended up skiing that spring. So I got hurt in November. I skied that April. And throughout that summer, again, baby steps, trained my butt off to, by the next winter, I was a 100% range of motion, strength, everything. And I started skiing a lot
Wow.
again. And I had a real honest conversation with myself. And it was, if you're going to keep going down this path, which I did because I loved it. I mean, it was unquestionable. I just loved skiing. I loved everything about it. But I was like, you have to make a promise to yourself that if you're not 100% sure about what you're about to do, you don't do it, period. Like if there's even a hair on your body that there isn't something you're not 100% about, you walk away every time. And so that protocol and that intimate relationship with consequences I learned from shattering my femur led me down this strange path of, getting back on my feet and starting to, ski at a high level again. And I found that I was starting to be attracted to cliffs more than I ever had because I could wrap my head around it. To me, it was very static. I was like, okay, you can go into a landing and spend as much time as you want and probe, look at landings in the summer to learn where the boulders are. And I started learning about snow depths and how up towards the top of the mountain, if there's a 100-inch base up where the cliffs are, there's typically 150 to 250 inches of snow. We're talking 15 to 30 feet of snow on top of boulders, trees, all those kinds of things that could be down in the landings. But all these landings, typically, from where I was looking, there weren't boulders, there weren't trees, because that's obviously part of the protocol. You have to know what you're jumping into. And then the sheerness of the cliff, and then the takeoff. If those three parameters are super clean and easy to interpret, then I was like, started trying 40 footers and 45 footers. And then, another year went by. There was this one skier at the time. His name was Jamie Pierre. He's also a Utah guy. He moved out here from Minnesota, and he cracked the code. He was in all the movies at the time doing, 80 to 150 foot cliffs routinely. And I was just mesmerized. I was like, hey, if this dude figured it out, I can figure it out. Like, what did he figure out that I'm missing? Because anytime you're around a cliff over 50 feet, even a 50-foot cliff, it is terrifying. It's always super scary, And I just couldn't wrap my head around how he was consistently doing these big cliffs. And I was so, attracted to it that I finally had this aha moment. And I went up into Wolverine Cirque that he pioneered, this beautiful 150-foot cliff up there that's in between Alta and Brighton up in the Cottonwoods. And I went up there in the summer and I sat on the end of his cliff and just hung out, meditated, just kind of I wanted to be in that space and just feel what it feels like to be in those kinds of places. Because I'm like, if you're going to be pursuing being in these kinds of places, probably the more time you can spend in these kinds of places, you might find some insight. So I went up there in the summer and I was just chilling out, trying not to think about much. I just wanted to be there. And it finally hit me. I was like, holy crap. I've hit hundreds of cliffs that are 30 to 40 feet. And I'm in the air for maybe a second and a half. I'm like, all I need is a half a second or maybe 1 second of composure. Because if I'm in the air for a second to hit a 50-foot cliff, if I'm in the air for just one more second, that's going to equate to at least 50 more feet, if not 70 more feet. And if I know the landing's good, if I can just stay composed for one more second in the air, that's it. And so obviously I was so excited for the next winter because I wanted to implement this kind of aha insight that I had of just one more second of composure would lead down what I saw as cracking the code that this guy Jamie Pierre had figured out. And so The next winter came around. It was a huge winter. It was probably, mid-January or so. And we were across the street from Alta and Snowbird up in Cardiff. And we were skiing some sunrise powder just for some nice general ski photography for powder skiing. And then as we got some great shots in the morning, we were making our way down on the Looker's Ride of Hellgate. And I happened to come across this big cliff, and I was able to study the landing, study the takeoff. And it was probably about a 90-foot cliff. And it was going to be, roughly double the size of anything I'd ever done. And it was like, okay, here's the time to implement that composure that you've been talking about and thinking about and have fell in love with. And I got to the edge of the cliff and just alarm bells, pure heart rate spike, just everything in my being said, get out of here. And I just was like, okay, next time. And then I just realized right then, I was like, okay, this is always going to be scary. Like, you're either going to stare this, in the eye and think about the fear, sit with your fear and realize this is scary, but can you do it? And can you see on the other side of the fear, And so I sat with my heart rate. I sat with that fear until I could see it for what it was. It was a scary cliff. It was going to take a lot of courage and mental kind of fortitude to calm myself down to, yes, realize this is scary, but also realize, yes, you have the skills to do this. You know the landing is good, and you can do this. You can. And you need to just calm down and understand that this is scary, but it's still possible. And so over about a 40-minute process of, sidestepping the in-run, looking down, I hiked down to the landing a couple times and just probed and thought about everything and just made sense of it all. And I got back up onto the takeoff. And finally, I was like, I transcended that fear. I entered this realm of pure awareness. Like I said, I was now beyond, like, when people say they visualize what they're about to do. I mean, I had lived it. I knew what I was going to do. I just knew I could do it. And I was completely on the other side of that fear, which was so profound. I can't even tell you. So anyway, I ended up getting to 30 seconds out, and I'd never met that Jamie Pierre guy. And of all people in the backcountry, who comes skiing up when I'm like 30 seconds ready to go? Jamie Pierre. And he's
no kidding.
He came out to practice too.
It was so bizarre. And he's like,
that's
hey,
awesome.
Man. And he kind of saw what I was doing, and he's like, and he was super cool. He realized I'd already gone through the whole process of figuring everything out. And he's like, sick. He's like, do you mind if I hit it after you? And I was like, of course, man. And so it was really cool that, I guess I saw it as like a good omen that he just showed up out of nowhere. And I calmed myself down because I was already on the other side of fear, called in the 10 seconds on the radio, and the photographer and the filmer were all set up down there, and, hit the cliff, executed it perfectly. I was composed, and the landing, because I was so relaxed and I was so profoundly aware of what I was doing, when I hit, it was like the softest landing I'd ever hit. Like, I did not feel a thing. And I was skiing away, pulled off to the side, and I was just laughing because I'm like, oh my God, there is not a limit. If you can mentally get a hold of the situation from here on out on cliffs, physically, I just cracked the code, and I cannot wait to see if I can get on the other side of fear on more cliffs way bigger than this one. And so that year and the next year and the year after that, I hit that 210 footer. I did a 140 footer in a contest, which is a world record too. That one in Wolverine, I hit 4 times in 1 year. I did a front flip, a back flip, a straight air, and I did a huge ass spread eagle I held forever.
Wow.
And from that point on, the last 10, 12 years, I've, followed that protocol of 100% or you walk away. And I've had to quite a few times. And that's pretty hard when you're out on these big productions with, other professionals that only have so many days they can be productive themselves. So we have to choose wisely to be productive. But it's great to work with guys that when they have had to see me walk away, they all just give me a hug and they're like, oh man, it's so awesome to see you be able to make a decision like that and not feel pressured into anything, And so It's a weird path that I have. And like I said earlier, when I say that I've done a 210-foot cliff, it is so absurd. When I see the pictures, it's all absurd. But when I'm in the moment, it all makes sense. I have 20/10 eyesight, so I can see the ground in detail. I can just make sense of it all. But then obviously when I'm not in like that kind of crazy meditative state and then I see the results every time, always, it's like, I cannot believe I'm that guy. How in the world did I become the cliff guy? It's crazy.
Have you ever looked at a picture of yourself and gone, oh, that is so dangerous?
Oh, every time. But that's like
your poor mother.
I know.
Well, your mom needs a lot of hugs.
But that's what I was saying earlier, since I've been on that edge of mortality and did almost die, I profoundly understand the consequences. So,
and you know what you want.
Yeah. And so, like I said, there's no Mountain Dew driving my ambitions. There's no pound my chest. I understand the stakes and I love life. I want to live a long, healthy life. I'm in love with life, and to routinely do things that are so dangerous, that's absolutely something I'm hyper aware about.
That's so awesome. We need to switch directions. We got a few Salt Lake City related questions that we ask everybody that comes on the show here, Julian. So I'm excited to ask you, especially since you grew up here. We have family and friends that visit us from time to time. I'm sure throughout the years, you've had family and friends come to town to visit you, and they're like, show me around town. Give me a tour. I'm curious what the Julian tour is like. Do you have like an area of town or buildings or a hike or the mountains? Like, where do you take people when you want to show off the area?
Oh, it's a great question. I usually love to take people on Jack's Peak. Okay. And that's the one obviously up behind the H Rock, because I still feel like a really great hike. And you still get an awesome view, but it's actually really not that big of a hike. It's only maybe 2.5 miles round trip and you get 1,000 vert, but you get up way high, you get to see the valley and the entire city. And then afterwards, I usually like to go to the Bayou for a beer, because obviously they have a great beer menu there, maybe some live music, and then probably cruise to Stone Ground or Porcupine, or maybe, what's the place called? Lake Effect. That's a new one. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. There's so many cool spots in Salt Lake, but I'd say Jack's Peak, Bayou, Lake Effect. How about that?
Awesome. If you could change one or two things about Salt Lake City, what would you change? Like, let's say you had the ability to change a couple things in however you want to interpret that, whether it's Salt Lake. A big thing or a little thing.
I would time the lights better. I get so frustrated when you are sitting at a red light, goes green, and then you go half a block and the next light turns red. You're like, who didn't figure out the lights here? That's what I changed. But other than that, nothing. Salt Lake's the best.
That's so awesome.
Right on.
Dude, I've had such a blast talking with you tonight, and I'm so glad that we connected to bring you on the podcast and connect with you that way. And I know we just kind of skimmed the surface, right with everything. And I know there's probably so much more we could talk about and everything.
I know. I had to resist asking more questions.
Before we do completely wrap this up, is there anything that you were hoping we would talk about that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
No, I think we nailed it, man. I think I can't stress enough that I was born in the Avs. I'm a native Salt Laker, and I travel the world and people ask where I'm from. I love waving the Salt Lake flag proudly. I love this place. I can't think of growing up in any other kind of place. It's been home base my whole life. It's the coolest city, the best mountains, best proximity, best international airport. I got so much love for Salt Lake, and it's so cool to see what you guys are doing by showing off a lot of the personalities that live in this amazing town. So I'm honored to be on the show. Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks for just being like a genuine badass ambassador for how cool our city actually is. You know?
Hell yeah. Well,
I think that's
when people
great.
say, do you have paved roads? What's up with the alcohol laws? I usually say, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I don't drink.
We've gotten phone calls like, do they have bottled water over there? Yep. We have bottled water.
How can listeners connect with you, man? Like your websites and stuff like that, like for Discrete and for everything you got going on.
You can find me on all the Facebooks, and I have a website for all three of those, or just Instagram. Okay. There's, the Cirque Series Instagram, Discrete, and Julian Carr. So there's a website for all three and Facebook for all three.
Awesome. And I'll put those links at iamsaltlake.com as well with this episode. Chrissy has a final question that she asks everybody, Julian. So I'm going to let her ask the question again. Thank you for doing the show. We'll have to catch up like a year or two down the road, see what you're up to.
I like it, man. Thank you.
Yeah, for real. This was so inspirational and fun. Thank you. Before we let you go, though, can you leave our listeners with a motto or a piece of life advice that you live by, or that you wish everyone else would live by?
I would say find your footing. I always like to say that. There's like, I think curiosity is amazing. And I think that if you can just find your footing, and at least start to find the earth beneath your feet with whatever you're curious about, that's just better than being a spectator. I think there's a time to spectate and there's a time to participate. And I think that when you can get that earth beneath your feet and become a participator and not just a spectator in whatever your interests are, I feel like you grow as a person, and whatever ideas that you have start to have life behind them.
Thank you again to Julian Carr for joining us on this episode of the podcast. If you want to follow Julian, all of the links that we talked about in this episode will be in the show notes on our website at iamsaltlake.com/461. So we're also actually going to put an amazing video on with those show notes on our website. So you have to go and check it out.
Hey, before we mention our Patreon supporters, because it's the first episode of the month, I want to talk about weekly wins, because that's what we're going to focus on here in December for I Am Salt Lake podcast is weekly wins.
I'm liking mixing it up a little bit, like have some gratitude, brag a little, or feel good about something, recommend something.
Yeah. So what's your weekly win, Chrissy?
Okay. My weekly win is, it's kind of still like advice for everybody too. Yeah. Took you out for your birthday dinner.
Yeah.
And the waitress was so amazing. I wanted to tip her, and I tipped more than I would usually tip, and it made me feel really good, so that's my weekly win. I've been trying to tip people more, and I think everybody should. I mean, I know that I personally, and I know you do, we advocate for small business, but I really also want to advocate for everybody
because they need a job.
Hard.
I mean, they got Christmas is coming up,
Yep. Because it's a hard year. Yeah. This is the hardest time of the year. In the hardest year, people who are serving you at restaurants and working hard or helping you fix your car or, tip everybody. Give them a smile and a hug and a high.
I love that.
No, not those.
Hey, so my weekly win, it's my birthday, like I mentioned like Chrissy mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast, 43 years old. I came out like a bandit this year for my birthday, though. I woke up, you had a little scavenger hunt for me with awesome gifts. I mean, gosh, you got me slippers and barbecue stuff and a rat apron.
That was so much fun. I love making stuff like that. Oh, man.
Seriously, the best birthday. Best birthday ever. 43 years old. Who would have thought I would have made it this far, though?
Like I said, you're like a fine wine. You just keep getting better.
Now it's time to give love to our Patreon supporters, Chrissy. And we have a new Patreon supporter. Before I mention her name and give her thanks, though, I want to mention to everybody listening, we would love it if you would become a Patreon supporter, even for as little as $1. It helps keep this podcast going, helps out. We're helping the community out. So look at it as helping the Salt Lake City community out. Go to patreon.com/IamSaltLake. You can become a supporter for as little as $1. Let's run down this list of supporters. So Jen Seals, she's our newest Patreon supporter.
Ooh,
she was actually in one of my
Jen.
most recent podcast classes.
Oh, right
so
on.
Jen, thank you so much. Hopefully you can get your podcast started. I'd love to listen to it when you get that started. Mark Copeland is another one of our supporters. Nick Naylor, Brett Schmidt, Todd Bjorkland, Tim Harand, Michelle Stevens-Williams, Christopher A. Heiser, Brandon Hill, Alex Santee, Jay Chambers, Sana, John Miller, Brittany Hemingway, Eric Tomorrow, Nicole Davison, 3 Irons SLC, Nikki Line from New Zealand, and actually Ryan Prince is a Patreon supporter again. I don't know if I mentioned that before.
Welcome back, Ryan. We missed you. I feel like you're just listing off all of my friends.
Well, that's
my favorite thing about the Patreon list.
No, and what I love about them is they're all active in our Facebook community.
Yeah.
Well, most of them. They're not. I guess they're not all there, but a lot of them are active in our Facebook community.
Mm-hmm. And we haven't had a chance to meet everybody in person, but it feels like we really know each other.
Yeah,
it's
No,
so fun.
this podcast, we've built a really cool little community.
We have some cool people to talk to and hang out with.
Yeah. So many thanks to our Patreon supporters, and yeah.
Don't forget, you can always visit our website at iamsaltlake.com to listen to the entire back catalog of episodes. And remember, we're putting a video of Julian doing the 210-foot fall jump.
Whatever it is, bonkers jump.
Those are a lot of words I get individually, but not together. It's cool.
They're on the website, so go check it out. And if you have a friend that you think might enjoy the podcast, make sure to share it with them because, they might like this podcast too. You guys have a great week. Get out and enjoy the city, support local, and we're going to see you on the next episode of I Am Salt Lake Podcast.
And good night, Grammy.